Let's continue with discussions at the conference. We're joined now by International News Editor Sophie Mokoena, who's standing by with SABC News Political Editor Mzwandile Mbeje at the policy conference. Sophie, no doubt the issue of progressive internationalism and particularly immigration must be something that will create debate given the recent events in Krugersdorp, seeing that the president saying that the key to development in Africa is peace and stability.
Well, indeed, Tepiso, we are still here at Nasrec at the policy conference of the oldest liberation organization on the continent, formed in 1912. The aim to unite and to liberate Africans in particular who were oppressed. And more than 100 years on, the organization is still soldiering on, and currently it is the governing party in South Africa. And one issue that is uppermost in terms of international issues, the ANC, when it was launched, the aim was to unite Africa, not only South Africans, and also to play a role in the liberation of the continent. That is why the former leaders of the ANC, some of them were there when the Organization of African Unity was formed, and the current AU, when it was launched in Durban. The first chair of the AU was the former ANC President Thabo Mbeki. And with me I have the SABC Political Editor Mzwandile Mbeje, who is going to speak to us. The president of the ANC, when he spoke earlier on, he did touch on balance of forces, international balance of forces. Mzwai, if you were to give us a gist of what the ANC president said about, let's start with SADC.
Well, thank you very much, Sophie. I think the president also recognized that the existence of the ANC to become a force that it became was as a result of the support that it got from some of the neighboring countries. At the time it was frontline states. But of course, going beyond that, this is a former liberation movement which has alliances with a number of other former liberation movements which are in power, and their challenge right now is to make sure that they they improve the quality of lives of the people that they fought for. So he basically touched on those things, also looking at the economic integration of this region as a way to integrate the entire continent. You heard him when he spoke about the market, the 1.3 billion market that Africa is, also projecting that by 2050, I think will be 1.5, I think if I remember correctly, saying we need to harness this as people who have worked together. We know what our objectives were, so this is the opportunity to do that. So as the ANC, as it is meeting, so it must know its historical mission, that it's not just an island, but it is part of the bigger African continent.
Mzwai, let's talk about the continent. I think one critical issue that comes to mind is the issue of peace and security on the continent. When the president of the ANC spoke, he touched on this thorny issue. Do you think what he said can be something where citizens of the continent can really say ANC is still committed to be part of this important region, but also take a lead in stabilizing this continent? Because without peace and security, you can't get prosperity.
Absolutely, and I think he recognizes that. In fact, you were supposed to cover an event that should have happened last week, where South Africa was to play a leading role around the issues of Swaziland. And of course, that meeting didn't happen for various reasons. And then in DRC, we know that the situation is not as peaceful as everyone would want it to be. Of course, our neighbor here, Lesotho, yes, there's no violence, but there are issues that are simply unresolvable. And then as the leading party, as the ANC in the region, so what does it do? And then you go to Zimbabwe, for example. Yes, there is a party which is in alliance or which is friends with the ANC that somehow may have been struggling really to deal with the economic issues in that country. And we know, Sophie, that if the issues of the economy in every country are not resolved, so it will explode. And then what is it that the ANC is doing, given its own challenges? In fact, one of the things that you and I were speaking about was the issue of national interest. For the first time, we saw a new issue being brought in. What exactly does that mean? How does the issue of national interest differ from that of the region and, of course, the continent? So is it the fear that perhaps we are not able to address the concerns of your immediate citizens? Because remember, charity does begin at home, but as charity begins at home, you remain part of the global village.
Mzwai, turning to the current issues, the war in Ukraine, yes. There was no way he couldn't have touched on that, because clearly the impact of that war is being felt on the continent, particularly the sub-Saharan region, the poorest region. What do you think? What was on his mind? What was the message there? What was he trying to communicate about the impact of the war in Ukraine? But not only that, what is South Africa's position? And not the country, the party?
The party. You know, it's been very interesting because because of the alliances that we have at the international level, I mean, with the emerging bloc, which is called BRICS, so which we are generally inclined to because we are a member. But then we are the biggest trading partners with the West. And it is the West that is against what is happening. In fact, that is against Russia, the Russia that we are working with, particularly in regions like BRICS. And I think that's why you see South Africa tend to take a position, what do they call it, a position of neutrality, because they say they encourage dialogue, because we can't alienate either bloc. I mean, we want to be in working relationship with the BRICS. Remember, there's China there, the rising power. But the fact of the matter, Sophie, is that currently the West is our biggest trading partner, if you look in totality. So clearly, the president wanted to say, you know, South Africa will offer that which we did offer to the world. In fact, the fact that we transitioned without, in inverted commas, bloodshed, we can perhaps offer that advice to Ukraine and Russia.
Well, Mzwai, this week we saw the Foreign Affairs Minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, visiting Africa. Clearly there's a scramble for Africa, and everyone wants Africa to support his position as a country, or her position as the leader of a particular country. And now we are told in a few days to come, the Secretary of State of the United States of America, Antony Blinken, will be in South Africa, particularly in the SADC region, while the U.S. ambassador to the UN will be in East Africa, that is Uganda, and also the West Africa, which is Ghana. What about the ANC's position at the global level, particularly at the multilateral level? What was the message there? And is there an acknowledgement that we were a bit inward looking?
Yeah. You know, it's very interesting what you've said. You know, when the tough gets going, Sophie, you tend to look elsewhere. You tend to look for new friends. Actually, this continent remains largely untapped. How many times have you heard people say DRC can feed the entire world? So it tells you that there's a lot that remains untapped. Given that those two countries are warring at the moment, never mind that the US is not directly involved, but the fact that it keeps on supplying arms there tells you that they're involved. They have to look at the new markets, and that new market is Africa. For the ANC, it needs to tap onto that. That is why their position of neutrality and engagement will be the one on top. You need to engage with Blinken, you need to engage with Lavrov. If you do that, you'll benefit. Remember, if we could, we'd get all that oil from Russia right now.
Well, that's what's happening here at the ANC Policy Conference tomorrow. The commissions will be discussing the international relations document. And as Mzwai pointed out, there's a portion or a document within that document that speaks to South Africa's interests. It will be of interest to many Africans on the continent, in the diaspora, but also the international community, to get a sense of what this document entails. On Monday, the Minister of International Relations will be engaging with people who are involved at the diplomatic level, talking about the same issue, South Africa's international interest. And I think we will definitely bring you an update tomorrow in terms of what is the ANC saying going forward on issues of South African interest, but also international relations and peace and security on the continent and around the globe.